What's up YouTube family, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be sharing a very cool recipe. It is my grandma's recipe, my dad's mom's recipe for Waday. Now for a lot of you guys, you might not know what this is. It's basically similar to Guyanese style pulori in where you would soak your peas, you would grind them, and then you would add seasonings and fry them. However, it's a little different because you would end up spreading it into your hand and then making a little hole in the middle and then you fry it. This recipe is one that originated in South India, and the original recipe I believe is called Vada, which is V-A-D-A. Now, it's the same concept, it's a little fried delicacy, and I know you guys are going to enjoy it. My grandmother gives me memories of when she was a child and when her dad used to make it for her and her siblings. So I deemed it necessary to share this on my channel because one, not a lot of people know how to make this delicious dish, and two, it's definitely a historical recipe and one that needs to be shown and preserved. So I hope you guys enjoy. I wanted to talk about the different things that I use in the recipe today. You guys are going to see that I end up using chana, split peas, and urad dal or urdi dal as some of you guys might know it as. However, when my grandmother makes this, sometimes she will actually just use the split peas, like when she's making pulori, and just end up making some waday out of it. She'll end up spreading it in her hand and making the whole. If you wanted to not use the 3 different peas like I'm using today, you can go ahead and leave one out and supplement it with the other. So if you wanted to use all chana, you're welcome to do so. All urad dal, you're welcome to do so. And if you wanted to mix the split peas with something else, feel free to do so as well. Definitely do it as per your taste, as per your preferences, and go ahead and play with it a little bit. I know you guys are going to enjoy it. Now, for all of my South Indian folks out there, some of you guys might actually know this as Madrassi Bara as well. I've seen some people call it that, so whatever way you know it as, it is so delicious and it is amazing, guys. You're going to want to give it a try. The different grains or the peas that I'm going to be using for my waday today include some chana or some chickpeas, some yellow split peas, as well as some urad dal or urdi dal, as some of you might know it as. Now, these can be used as per your discretion. When my grandmother makes it, sometimes she will just use the yellow split peas, but if you wanted to, you could go ahead and mix and match them whatever way you want. All of my ingredients and measurements will be in the description box down below, so you can mix the amount of peas to however much you would like. Once you figure out the ratio of peas that you would like to use in your waday recipe, you're going to go ahead and take all of the dried peas and you're going to add them into a bowl. So I'm going in with all of my split peas or my dal, I'm going in with my urad dal, and I'm going in with all of my chana. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover these with some warm water to hot water. You want it to be pretty nice and warm, so this way they can really soak into those peas. And you want to make sure to cover it because these peas will grow as they soak up all of that liquid. So you can allow these to soak from anywhere from 6 hours to overnight. Overnight is optimal, but if you only have that 6 hours, you can go ahead and do so. It will come out just fine. That's the way that I actually made mine today because I was in a rush. So I went ahead and I covered it. I'm going to let it sit, and then we're going to come back and go over the rest of the ingredients. Now that I've soaked all of my peas, I'm going to go ahead and show you the rest of the ingredients that we're going to be using to make the waday today. So in my bowl there, I have all of my soaked peas, and as I said, I allow them to soak for about 6 hours, but if you have time to allow them to soak overnight, you can allow them to do so. I have a little bit of all-purpose flour, some salt to taste, a little bit of baking powder, some ground geera or cumin, some turmeric, as well as some cilantro. If you don't have cilantro, you can use culantro, and if you don't have culantro, use a cilantro. I also have some scallions, I have some garlic, and some pepper. Now for this dish, garlic and pepper needs to be in it. Put as much as you want. It's supposed to be nice and garlicky and peppery. What I did was I took all of my soaked peas and I went ahead and I put them in a colander and drained off and rinsed off any of that cloudy liquid that was attached to them. And then what I'm going to do now is take all of the peas along with my seasonings, so my cilantro, scallions, garlic, and hot pepper, and I'm going to grind them all up in my food processor until I get a very fine paste. Now some people actually like it to be a little chunky, so if you want it to be chunky, feel free to do so. Alright guys, so this is what my ground peas and all of those seasonings look like, and as you guys can see, I like my mixture on the finer side. If you want there to be a little more chunk in your mixture, feel free to make it a little more chunky when you're using it in the food processor. I also wanted to mention that while I was grinding these peas, I did not use a lot of water in that food processor because if you add a lot of water or too much, it's going to be too mushy and then you have to keep adding flour to compensate. And if you add too much flour, it can make your end product pretty hard and tough. So what I did was I added in my ground geera, my turmeric or dye as we know it, and I also added in a good amount of salt to taste. And I'm going in with my baking powder as well as my all-purpose flour. Now the baking powder is a little tip on my part. The baking powder adds a nice little puff to the waday, or your pulori if you were making that in this case. And the flour, it's going to depend for the amount for everybody. The reason being is because it'll depend on how much water you actually add into your food processor. So I had about 3/4 of a cup of flour on the side, so this way I could have just in case I wanted to add in. I think I ended up using the full 3/4 of a cup, but it's because I'm making a lot of waday. If you were making about half this batch or even less, you'd of course only want to add in a little bit. So you add in a little bit at a time, and once you're able to form the wadays in your hand, you'll be able to know whether you need to add more flour or not. Now, some people do not like to add flour when they're making waday at all. If you wanted to omit the flour from this recipe, you definitely could, but what you would need to do is make sure to not grind your peas and seasonings with any water. If you add that water, then you have to add flour. So don't use water if you want to omit the flour. So once you're finished mixing all of your dough, what I like to do is give it a little taste for salt. Yes, guys, you heard me right. You can go ahead and give the raw dough a little bit of a taste just to make sure it has the perfect seasoning. You can adjust it to your taste, and then once you're done doing that, it's ready to fry. Some people, if you would like to and you have the time, you can allow the dough to soak for about anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour if you really wanted to, but there's no need. I ended up letting mine sit for about 15 minutes just because I was doing other things in the midst of making the waday, so that's the reason why I let it sit, but it is not necessary at all. So what I did was I heated up some vegetable oil. You can use any light tasting oil to fry, and I have it on about a medium to a medium high heat. You want to keep it regulated so this way they don't get too dark on the outside and stay raw on the inside. And basically what I'm doing to form these is I am spreading some oil into my hand, and then I'm taking a small portion of the dough. You can make them as big or as small as you want. And what I'm doing is I'm flattening out in my hand. I'm making a little hole with one of my fingers, whatever way is best for you. And then I'm taking it off of my hand and sliding it into the oil. Now, there are so many different ways to do this. I know some people might put on a pair of plastic gloves so it'll slide off a little better. Some people actually use water instead of the oil. I don't like to use water because the water tends to make it splatter. If you guys remember, water and oil don't mix, so that's why I use the oil. And that's pretty much it. Whatever way you find that's easier for you to get them into the oil and to make that hole, go ahead and test that out for yourselves. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up a batch into this oil, and then I'm going to go ahead and start flipping them. They're going to cook for about a minute or two per side until they're nice and golden brown, and then I can take them out of the oil. It's been about a minute and a half, and I'm starting to flip them because I see that they're getting golden brown on the other side. So this process will actually go a lot faster if you have two people in the kitchen, so one person dropping them in the oil and then one person actually flipping them and taking them out of the oil. Now, just like I said in my bara video, my pulori video, the same case goes. Whenever you're frying anything, if you have two people, it's much easier. So I'm going to allow these to continue cooking on the other side for about another minute or two, and then I'm going to remove them from the oil. Alright guys, so these are what my wadays look like once they came out of the oil. As you guys can see, they have a nice crispy and golden brown exterior. That's just the way they're supposed to look on the outside. Make sure to keep that oil regulated so this way they don't burn and they stay raw on the inside. So I wanted to quickly mention before I close out this video that every family has their own way of making certain things. This is my grandmother's version, and I went ahead and I added my own tweaks to it. So I know that if you make it, it might come out differently for you because your family might have their own version. So just keep that in mind, please, when you're watching this video. So I hope you enjoyed. Go ahead and give it a try. Make sure to give this video a nice big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed yet, and leave your comments down below. I want to give my grandmother a big shout out. Thank you so much for sharing your recipe. I'll see you guys again very soon.